Goats are versatile feeders and will change their feeding behaviour according to forage availability. In this 4-part video series, we'll help you work out your forage budget for goats so that you can operate in an economically efficient manner with an eye to maximising productivity. The first stage of forage budgeting is to estimate and establish your supply.
First part in determining forage supply is to work out how much pasture is in the paddock. So we can use simple pasture yield photo standards, such as the one I've got in the hand, which has photos that represent different yields of pasture in the paddock. We compare the photos with what we can see in the paddock, and then we can work out roughly how much pasture we actually have in the paddock. That's fairly easy and quick to do. To get a more accurate figure on how much pasture is in the paddock, what we would normally do is cut a couple of quadrats of pasture. So we put our 1/4 square metre quadrant down, cut the pasture that's in there and put it into a bag, take that back and dry it. Once we've dried it, we weigh it on a set of kitchen scales and we work out how much yield there is of pasture in the paddock in kilograms per hectare. And then we use that figure and we walk across the paddock taking our quadrant with us and drop that down several times and compare what's in the quadrant as we put it down with the amount that we cut earlier in the day. So that gives us a much more accurate figure of how much pasture might be in the paddock. If you want more detail on how to work out the pasture component of a forage budget, go to the Future Beef website. There's a series of 4 videos there that explains how to do that in lots of detail.
Well, goats have different feeding mannerisms, I guess, compared particularly to cattle, but to sheep as well. They have a much higher browse rate.
While most grazing animals will consume some browse, goats have a preference for it. So we'll focus on budgeting for browse.
To find out how much browse we have in the paddock, we use the comparative branch technique. So firstly, we pick a 50-metre transit representative area. We cut a 2-metre long stick and then we walk that transit, counting every branch that is within browse range for goats.
So we walked a transect that was 2 metres wide by 50 metres long, which gave us 100 square metres of transect. And in that transect we found 24 branches. After we'd determined that, we took our representative branch and then we stripped all the leaves from that branch and some small twigs, and that's what we thought the goats would be eating when they're out in the paddock browsing. We took that leaf and those small twigs back and we dried those and weighed them. And they came out to be 125 grams dry weight of leaf. So in that 100 square metres, we had 24 times 125 grams, which works out to be 3,000 grams of dry matter. So that's what we've got in our 100 square metres. We need to work that up then to a full hectare. So we can work on a hectare basis, and we need to bring that back to kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So we know there's 10,000 square metres per hectare. If we divide that 10,000 by our 100 square metres that's in the transect, that gives us a figure of 100. So our 3,000 grams we need to multiply by 100. So 3,000 multiplied by 100. And then we need to divide that by 1,000 to give us kilograms per hectare of dry matter. And so when you multiply that out, that gives us 300 kilograms of dry matter per hectare of forage that's actually available for the goats to browse. Now when goats graze in a paddock and they access browse, they can usually access about 90 to 100% of the browse that's available on those trees and shrubs, as opposed to cattle and sheep who can't access nearly as much as goats can. Cattle might be able to access only 50 or 60% of the amount of leaf that's available on browse trees. Sheep a little bit more, perhaps 70%, but goats can access about 90% of that browse. So what we're going to do is multiply our 300 kilograms by 90%, and that gives us 270 kilograms per hectare of dry matter is available for the goats to browse. So we're going to use that figure now and work out how many goats we can run in our browse paddock, for the period of time that we need to do a dry season forage budget for.